So we've had a lot of requests lately for how to use CabWriter to design closets. And CabWriter wasn't originally designed with that in mind necessarily, but since we can draw boxes and shelves and doors and such and drawers, um, I thought I'd try to figure out a way that we could support some basic closets. And somebody sent me a model of a simple closet like this. I want to show you how you can use CabWriter to draw something like this. It's a little bit more work than standard cabinets, but still faster than drawing it part by part. So one of the characteristics of these kind of simple closet designs are a single partition in between each of the bays, as it were, with an individual top and a bottom in there. And this has a back on it, but typically you wouldn't have a back on there, but we need to draw it with a back on there, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So I want to demonstrate how you would do something like this. And so let's go to a blank version of this file. And to save some time, I've already got the layout lines on the floor. So what I've done is drawn a line 16 inches out because that's how deep we're going to be. And I've used, you can download this plugin from our website under the SketchUp plugins free. It's called Construction Plus. It's very handy because it's got something called a construction line. Allows you to lay out points on the ground. So if I wanted to just put a point here, it would give me a couple points to snap to when I'm using my story stick. So what I did was I laid out the distance for each of these bays, because what I need to do is I got to draw these cabinets individually and overlap their sides and then delete the side of one of the cabinets. Otherwise we'll have CabWriter only knows how to draw a cabinet with two sides, and in this case we need a cabinet, this one with two sides, this one with maybe no sides, so to speak, this one with two sides. I'll show you what I mean here. So why don't we draw a couple cabinets. So I've set up my defaults here. So right now I've got a CNC project set up, but I actually want to do line boring and actually disable the line boring. We're going to want holes in very specific places for something like this, so I'm going to show you how we do that. So for now I want to turn all the holes off, and we're going to go over here to our base cabinets, and I've got an 86-inch tall cabinet, an 86-inch tall divided base. And I've got the countertop thickness set to 0, no gap to the wall, and the depth of 16 inches. And if we go to the carcass, what I've done is I've had it turn off and say draw no toe kick frame. And we're actually going to, I think I'll leave the toe kick style on so that we get a front piece. I'll show you what I mean in a second here. We're going to have just a 3/4 inch setback. So let's try that. So this first bay I've laid out on the floor here, I think it's something like 30 inches wide. Yep. So I'm going to go to my story stick tool, and I'm going to lay out the first one starting on this edge. By the way, we've set for a completely frameless setup here so that we don't have any face frames getting involved. So I'm going to do left finish, which means it's going to do nothing special to this end. It's just going to be a simple end. You can see that it brought it down to 3/4 inch because in frameless, our face frame, everything's turned off. So it's going to go and use our carcass side, the side partition thickness, which is 3/4 inch. So that's what it's going to default this side to. And that's what I've got my little mark set here as. So if I go to this far one here, come back 3/4, just say a right finish, say OK. That's all I want to do for this bay. So I'm going to hit the Command key on the Mac, select a box type. We're going to go with a divided base because I want one fixed shelf in there at 40 3/4 inch. And we get a box with a fixed shelf in there. And what I can do later, I'll show you real quick right now, is select these, unlock them. I'm going to turn off my floor layer and flip this upside down, and I can pull this down the 4 inches to the floor. I'm going to type in 4 inches and do the same to this one so that that goes all the way to the floor. And we can see that I've got this base piece here, and I'm going to have to shorten that later and maybe push it back a little bit. 3/4 of an inch wasn't quite enough, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. That's something you can clean up at the end. So now I want to draw the second bay, and what I'm going to do is when I go to my story stick here, I'm going to this was the same place that the side was for this cabinet. I'm going to put the left side of this bay right on top of it. So I'm going to call it a left finish again. I'm going to call this one a right finish. Not that it matters much because we're going to delete it later, but so we've got that bay. Hit the Command key again. This box was also a divided base, 3/4 of an inch. Oh, I didn't mean to say 3/4 of an inch. I meant to say 40 3/4. So I can highlight this cabinet, right click, say CabWriter, Edit Cabinet, use the stored defaults, yes. So instead of 3/4 of an inch, I wanted 40 3/4. So there we go. And later, I would do the same thing with the base here. But what I need to do here is the last thing drawn was this cabinet side. And how do I know which cabinet this belongs to? I can click on this guy and come over here, and it says that's C23. This one is C21. When I click on this, it's C23. It belongs to C23. So I'm going to unlock that and delete it so that I don't have two sides sitting on top of each other. I can actually delete this one, unlock and delete it right now if I want, because I'm going to then draw this cabinet here. If I go back to my model here to remind myself what I've got. Here I've got one big bay with a bunch of shelves that I'm going to have to angle later. So I think what I'm going to do with this is draw it as just a standard cabinet with one shelf in it, and then I'm going to angle that shelf later and replicate it all the way up. So let's go back and go back to my story stick. I'll call this a left finish again. Okay. I'm going to call this a right finish. Okay. Hit the Command key. So this one I'm going to just do a standard base. 0 doors, 1 shelf, and no shelf pin holes right now. So I say OK. So this is a one adjustable shelf that we've got in here. So we're just going to leave that alone for the moment. And now we can draw our last bay. And this, if you recall, was just a tall bay with 2 doors on it. And so go back to my story stick. Call this a left finish again. And I'm starting a few inches from the wall. We're going to do this as a right finish. Command key again. And we're going to call this a standard base, but this time with 2 doors. And we're going to use 3 shelves and the default number of shelf pins, which probably is none in this case because we turn line boring off. So we could decide later if we want line boring, but we're going to have to think about some things first. So I'm going to just leave this. Let me turn the doors off and make sure there's nothing inside there. There's not. We got shelves, but no shelf pins. So we've got a situation here where we've got 2 sides on top of each other. Which one are we going to keep? That is the question. So for now, because I know that this one's going to have all those angled shelves in there, and we might want those to be adjustable, and I have to have shelf pin holes in there for that, maybe. I'm going to delete the one for this cabinet right here. Actually, no. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change my mind here. We're going to redraw this cabinet and turn on line boring. So we're going to do we're going to leave the line boring on. And, well, we got a problem here. So we got to decide what we want to do here. If we want shelf pin holes on this side, and let's say this is going to be a CNC job, we're going to have some weird boring pattern on this side for our angled shelves, but on this side we want standard line boring. And that's unless we can CNC on both sides of a part, that's going to be difficult. So we might have to manually drill one side of it and maybe automatically drill the other side. If we're not doing CNC, have at it. You can do it any way you want. You don't even have to draw them at this point. But if you are doing CNC, you're going to want these holes punched in there. So we really have to think about that. So maybe we wouldn't have wanted to put a bay like this next to this one. We have to think about that. But let me just show you what we would do. These are all the things you want to think about before you're going ahead here. So just let me enable line boring for a sec on this last cabinet. And I'm just going to say CabWriter, redraw selected cabinets, use the stored defaults no because I changed them. And okay, if we look at our, the inside, you can see we've got line boring all the way up and down because people might want to change where those shelves are in there. But we're still left with 2 sides here, right? And this side that I just highlighted belongs to C24, which is this guy. C24, I can see. That's the one I want to get rid of. Unlock, delete. So now I've got, how do I know if I've got more than one side here? I can unlock it, right click and say hide, and I see that there is no other side there, so I'm going to undo. So I've got one partition on each of these. I got all my holes drilled on this one, so I'm good to go. So this one was going to use a closet rod in all 3 of these. So if I go back to my other model, I can copy that closet rod. Here we go. So I can copy one of these closet rods. Hold on. For some reason my other file is not responding here. Close it. Save it. I'm going to reopen that file. That one. Now I can select the closet rod. I'll just select all three of them since they're already in the right spot. And I can put that here. And I can then use the standard SketchUp tools to sort of move that around until I get it wherever I want. So you can decorate this however you want to do it. Obviously I don't have it in quite the right spot there. You can move it over again a little bit. But I'm not going to spend any time playing with that right now. So what I want to do is show you, actually I am going to move this one over just in case it's in the way of get the right angle sometimes. There we go. Alright, because I want to show you how we can get some holes just in the upper half of this cabinet. So we've got two ways we can do that. One way is we can measure this distance here. So that's 40 3/4. So maybe we want from bottom of the side to here is 41 1/2. Maybe we want it to start another 3 inches up from that. So we want it to start at 44 1/2 inches up. So I can go back to my settings. First I'm going to click on this and say use the tool to retrieve cabinet defaults. And we're going to go to our line boring tab. Remember we had it disabled. Well, I'm going to enable it. And I'm going to say the first hole distance is 43, what did I say, 43 1/2, something like that. I'm going to go back to my 23 drill bits that are on my line boring machine, and we'll see where that gets us. And so now I can redraw this cabinet. Remember, this cabinet had its two sides intact, so I'm going to say redraw selected cabinets. I just right-clicked on that. Use the stored defaults? No, because I changed them. And we can see we have holes here on both sides. They don't go up quite as far as I want, so I need probably, I don't know, 5 more holes. So if I go to line boring again and say 28 holes, and say right click, CabWriter, redraw selected cabinets, use the stored defaults, no, there we go. So I've got a shelf, or I've got shelf pin holes there, but I don't have any shelves. So I'm going to take this fixed shelf and unlock it. I'm going to use the move command from SketchUp, this guy right here. And if you hold the option key down on the Mac, I think it's control on the PC, it's actually a copy operation. So I copy that up there, and I'm going to triple click on it because I want to push it in 1/4 inch. Because see what happened? It moved the other one. So first I have to say, highlight it and right click it and say make unique, so that it's different from this guy. Now I triple click on it, push it in 1/4 inch, type in 1/4, and there we go. We've got one shelf, but it still thinks it's a fixed shelf, and I don't want that. I want it to be a custom part labeled as an adjustable shelf. So I'm going to use this tool here, which is the Make CabWriter component. And it's still cabinet number C28L, but I'm just going to make it a custom part. No subtype, and we're going to call it adjustable shelf. Actually, no reason to make it a custom part. I'm just going to call it a box, and we're going to call it a shelf. So it's an adjustable shelf. I'm going to say OK. And now what we have to do, because we changed some things, I'm going to highlight it and go to the Extended Entity Info window and make sure that we still have material assigned to it. Since it was already a CabWriter part, CabWriter leaves that information in there. So we're good. So now I can copy this as many times as I want. So I'm going to hit the Move command by hitting the letter M, Option, 1 shelf, 2 shelf, 3 shelf. All right. So this closet is mostly done. We've got our shelf pinholes in here and some shelves. If I wanted more shelves in there, I could go simply copy them like I just did here. These are just closet rods, so we're good. And this one's the tricky one. So first I want to make those angled shelves. So I'm going to unlock this, and I'm going to pull this all the way down to the bottom. So I'm just going to hit the Move command by hitting M, move it all the way on the blue axis all the way down, and then move it up 3 inches. That's where I want the first one to start. And I'm going to hide this side here. I'm going to zoom in here. I want to angle this. All right, so we use the rotate command. Here we go. You see how this switches around? Depending on what face you're on, it changes color to that axis. But I want to stay on the green axis, so what I do is make sure it stays green, nestle it down in that corner until I get the green. Then you click once, come out any distance, click again, and then lift up. And then you'll see the angle in the lower right hand corner that I'm at. I can just type in whatever angle I want. So 15 degrees is what I want. And when I typed it in, you can see we angled it 15 degrees. Now because of that, we're not touching at the back here. So I'm going to hit M again for move. And I'm going to move straight back on the red axis until I touch. And that brought me a little bit back in the front too, which is nice. So long as I'm here, I'm going to make this as a CabWriter component, but I'm going to turn it into a custom part because of the way we've changed things up here. It's not a standard shelf anymore. I'm going to make it a custom part, same cabinet number that it was. We're going to call this an angled shelf, and we're going to call it angled shelf number 1. All right, and we want to do CabWriter protection because we do not want CabWriter to redraw that shelf if we ask it to do a redraw. Now it's saying because we made this into a custom part, the Cutlass Bridge attributes might not be there anymore. And that's what we were looking at in the Entity Info window earlier. So if I highlight it, go to Extended Entity Info, we can see that we don't have any material type. So we want to say sheet good. I had this set for pre-finished maple plywood. You would do it to whatever you were using. And the component type is custom. We can turn cabinet resize mode on, but we do not want to turn on auto swap in this case, because a custom part doesn't get affected by auto swap. Auto swap means if this detects that it's a shelf, so this is a subtle, hold on, we've got what we need here. So as a reminder, what auto swap is it applies to things like standard shelves, bottoms and sides. We want the grain normally running this way around a cabinet. If our bottom had a length, we consider within CabWriter that the length is always with the grain. And since the grain normally goes this way on a part like this, if this was a really narrow cabinet where this distance was shorter than this distance, if we didn't have auto swap on, the length would always be the longest number, which we don't want in this case. We would, if this was short, we would want this to be the length. So CabWriter with auto swap on automatically detects that this is a bottom or a shelf or a side and does the right thing with the length and the width measurements. Since we turn this into a custom part, it doesn't really know what to do with that, so we're going to leave auto swap off. Luckily, this length is with the grain, and that'll show up properly on our cut list. If you didn't have that situation, you might have to go manually swap those around. So here we go. We've got one. So now I can say move, and I'm going to move 8 inches up. So I'm going to hit 8 and hit return. Before I do anything else, I'm going to say X 8. See that down in the lower right hand corner here? Remember, don't do anything else after you type in that 8. And what that does, oops, let me just undo this, because I screwed it up by going off there. So hitting the Option key with the move command, going up the blue axis some distance, type 8, return, X8. And what that does is it does it 8 more times. So now I got 8 shelves there. What I should have done before doing that is, if I go back to my other model, where is my other model here? Right here. I had this little grate on here that I'm copying, and I can put over here. So I should have put that on there and then in the right spot and copied that up with all of them. But if you're doing this for yourself, you can do that. All right, so now I've got all my shelves in there. So what if I wanted to do something fancy, like put some angled shelf pin holes in here? How would I do that? Well, one way I could do it is, this shelf right now is touching this side. So I can use my tape measure tool, and if I go like this, just pull it, click on that intersection, pull it down, and see it comes at the same angle as the shelf. And then I go back up, and I can put a line there that I can use. And then what I can do is use my tool that I showed you earlier, my construction line tool. I can go to the end point where it meets the end of that shelf, and I can come in, oh, let's say 2 inches. And from the front of the shelf, I can come in 2 inches. All right. Now I'm going to hide this shelf. Say hide, right click, hide. want to put a hole right there and a hole right there. So I'm going to, and I want to do it into this cabinet side, which is locked. It's red. Right click, say unlock, triple click, go to the circle tool, and type in the radius I want. So I like to drill 5mm holes, so I'm going to type in 2.5 mm for millimeter. And I'm going to do the same thing here, 2.5 mm. Now, I want the same holes under each of these shelves, and I know that I spaced my shelves 8 inches apart, right? So if I just select that hole and then say Shift key, select this hole also, I'm going to go to my Move command again, the letter M, hold down the Option key, and I can drag these on the blue axis, which means I'm going straight down. Type in 8, return, X8, return. Now, if I did that right, zoom out, look under here, and indeed, look at that, I have holes in the right spot under each shelf. All right, but all they are is holes on the surface. They aren't punched in yet. So what I'm going to do to make things clearer here, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, you can, under your View menu, Component Edit, Hide Rest of Model. Now when I triple click on something, a component to edit it, you'll see that everything else gets hidden, so I can just concentrate on this guy. So I could go in here and I could use the push-pull tool right here, and I could push this hole in a 1/2 inch or whatever I want, and then I could push that hole and that hole and that hole and that hole. So that would be the normal way to do it. But I've written a plugin that I'm going to put up on the CabWriter site under the SketchUp free plugins that can punch all these holes for me. So if I click on this, triple click on this whole thing, and then right click, you see that I have this thing called multiple circle push. That's going to detect all the circles on here that aren't pushed in and push them whatever distance I say. So I'm going to say push. It's asking me the distance. I'm going to type in 0.5 for 1/2 inch. If we look, that one's pushed, that one's pushed, and we're good. I could have also just selected these individually and keep hitting the Shift key to select them, and that would have worked as well. Multiple circle push. All right, so I got them on that side, and what I had to make sure of is that they didn't interfere with the holes. Remember, we punched a bunch of holes on the other side of this. That's why I know those are 37mm in from each edge here, so that's why I went 2 inches in from here, so I could avoid those. But remember, with a CNC, I've got the problem that now I've got holes on both sides, so I've got to decide what I want to do there. If I want to line bore one side, or maybe make a jig for these on this side. If I had this situation, I could have a problem. If you're doing everything manually, you can put them in quite easily. But how do I get them to the other side? Well, there's a bunch of ways, but the way I'm going to do it is I could go through that same sequence of events on the other side, but I know my other side. I'm going to use my tape measure tool. My other side is exactly 23 inches from the face of this side to the face of this side, which I can't see right now. So I'm going to say View, Hidden Geometry, and I'm going to Shift click both these, right click and say Unhide. Actually, I want to keep this one hidden. Notice we can still see it, so I have to say View Hidden Geometry and turn that off. All right. So what I want to do is select these circles and copy them over to this other side. How do I do that? Well, I can't select the circle right now because it's part of this component. So it selects the whole component. What I have to do is triple click on it. This time I want to do component edit, not hide rest of model. So I just triple clicked on this component. You can see it put it in edit mode by this little box around there. And now I got to select all those circles on the surface only. If I look here, right now everything is selected. This interior face, the external circle, everything. If I just select this circle, I can do that, and then I got to go select this circle and all the way down the line. So I've written another tool that will allow me to select all the circles on a face. So I'm still in component edit mode here. I select this face and then right click and say select all circles on face. See, it unselected my face, and now only the circles are selected but not anything on the interior. So what I'm going to do is say edit, copy. So I've copied all those circles. Now I'm going to click anywhere out here, and now I'm out of component edit mode. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say edit, paste in place. So I put them right back where they were, but this time they're outside the component, they're on the surface. And I'm just going to take the move command again while they're still highlighted. And you see what I did? I just pulled those circles away. And I know that I'm 23 inches to that other face. So I'm going to say typed in 23. If I look, spin around here, you can see they're on the surface. However, they're only on the surface. They're not on the component. I can't punch them into the component at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to again say edit, cut. So I just cut them, and now I'm going to go and edit this component. Triple click. I'm going to say edit, paste in place. So now they're on the surface, and we're in component edit mode. So now all I got to do again, they're all selected. So I can just hover over one and right click, and again my multiple circle push comes up because they're already selected. I can do that, say 0.5, and I'm there. I've got those same holes punched in the same spot on the other side. You might have to watch that one a few times to understand exactly what I did, but basically when a hole is punched in something into a component, the only way I can access that hole is to get back in component edit mode. And now that hole consists of a circle on the surface, an inside face. See, I selected the inside of the circle now, but the exterior is not. So I want to just select those circles, and the tool that I used was I triple clicked and said multiple circle push originally to do that, but if I want to select them, I just select this face. It can only be one face at a time. Right click, say select all circles on face. Then what I did was I copied those, got out of component edit mode, pasted them in place. That's important that you do paste in place so they go right back in the same spot. Now they're on the surface. I moved them over to this surface, cut them, went back into component edit mode on this guy, pasted in place, and while they were still highlighted I did multiple circle push. And you can get the multiple circle push and select all circles on a face in a plugin called Circle Tools up on our website. So now we've got this whole wall done here. And again, I could go down and I would pull all these down to the ground and adjust this baseboard, do whatever I need to do for that. Now, one of the problems is we've got the backs here. And the reason why we have the backs still is if I want to do production documentation on this, I create a scene. I'm going to create a scene called cut list. I've already got a scene created, but I don't want the floor or the walls on. So I'm going to update my cut list scene so that it doesn't have any of that. And now I'm going to go do CabWriter production documentation. And I'm using the cut list scene for everything, and right now I just want a spreadsheet cut list and my DXF files and a cut list plus cut list. I'm going to say OK. It's doing its thinking. Doing a lot of thinking. All right, so I put all the files in there in the right spot in that folder. And however, let me go delete the back. I'm going to unlock this and delete the back. And I'm going to do CabWriter production documentation again. Say OK. Give it a sec. All right, that was fine. Now let me delete this back. There we go. So it's telling me that there's a component type C4LB1 adjustable shelf that is not accompanied by a back in the selection. And I'm probably, this one must be, let's see, C4. That's this guy. So it didn't detect it when I first got rid of the back on this one, but when I got rid of the back on this one, it complained. Basically what's going on here is CabWriter, in order to do what I was talking about earlier with the auto swap and getting the length and width correct based on the grain direction, and again, we assume grain direction always goes this way around a cabinet. And in order to make sure that the length is always with the grain direction, no matter how narrow the cabinet is, one of the rules is a cabinet has to have a back touching a bottom and a side and a shelf. That's how CabWriter knows it's a properly constructed cabinet. So if we go and delete these backs before we create our production documentation, we're not going to be able to create it. So the trick is leave the backs on. Which I'd have to get back to that. Do a whole bunch of undos. But you leave the backs on, create all your production documentation. Then if you want to delete them, you can, or they'll end up in a separate file. You can delete them from your cut list. You can not use that DXF file, and just make sure that your cabinet width comes out correct without a back. So if I really wanted a 16-inch deep cabinet without a back, I would have to adjust that depth, because actually I've got 16 from the wall to the front of these doors. If I really wanted this whole thing to be 16, I would have to adjust my cabinet depth appropriately, and then just assume that the backs will be deleted later. Or maybe you want backs on there. So either way, just be aware that the backs have to stay on there until you get your production documentation done. All right, so if I turn my walls and my floor back on, so I'm going to view guides here. Oops, sorry, view guides. And I'm going to turn on my construction lines. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time drawing these upper ones here, because they'd be the same exact thing, except for I would use uppers because they're not on the floor. If we go to my original model here, we would start above the floor. If I turn my guides on, so the uppers have to be set up properly. So if we look at these, we see that my upper cabinets now are both the divided upper and the regular cabinet height are 71 inches. So 15, I'm assuming 15 inches off the ground to line up with my 86-inch tall cabinet here. I'm doing these at 71. And this one I simply draw as a standard upper. This one I drew it as a divided upper, and then I used the drawer insert tool, which is this one right here, to insert the drawers. And we have a separate video on that, so I don't want to spend the time going through that. If I was going to have adjustable shelves up here, I could do that selective line boring, where I start my line boring up here just like I did on the other one. Or if I wanted to do something fancy, I could put an array of holes in here myself. What I did with this one is I just I brought my guideline up, changed the height of my uppers, drew a shorter upper, and deleted the bottom of it. Now, deleting a bottom is going to cause me some problems when I do my production documentation, just like deleting a back. Or it could cause me a problem. If that's the case, what you would do is turn these into custom parts. So I could highlight it, use the CabWriter, make CabWriter component, and turn that into a custom part. Once you've told CabWriter it's a custom part, then it's not going to complain about it when it does the cut list. So I would turn all the parts of this cabinet here into a custom part. And I had a side that drew over here overlapping this one. I just deleted that. So I could turn all these into custom parts. And if I want to punch holes in this side, I could unlock this. And let's just say I wanted to put a grid of holes in here. Let me just review how that works. So I'm going to hit the tape measure tool, which is T. I'm going to come in 37 millimeters from the back, 37 millimeters from the front, and let's just say 4 inches from here. And I'm going to triple click on this so that I go in component edit mode, zoom in, go to my circle tool, I hit C, 2.5 mm, 2.5 mm, and I'm going to select this one, select this one, the move tool, M, hit the option key, go up, type in 32 mm, X, and let's call it 30 more holes, X30, and it gave me an array of holes. Is it how many that I want? That might have been a little too many, but I'll just leave it for now. I could do undo and do it again. Notice they're not selected at the moment, and or pushed in. So I'm still in component edit mode. See that? All I got to do is triple click on this so all the circles are highlighted, or go highlight them manually. Say right click, multiple circle push. Keep in mind every circle on any side of this part now will be pushed in a half an inch, which it did. If I didn't want every circle on here, if I just wanted some, I could just highlight those circles. Highlight some more by shift clicking until I got all of them, and then I could right click just those circles and say multiple circle push. So now I've got circles in there, and notice they're going off at an angle. That means when I did that move pulling them up, I wasn't on the axis moving up, I was drifting. So I would want to do that again. And then I could go over the other side and do the exact same thing. Or I could do the trick with moving the holes over. In this case, it'd probably be easier just to go replicate it on the other side. So you can just keep going and going. Basically, the basic concepts are you're overlapping your cabinets and deleting a side, selectively drilling holes where you need to, using the line boring, or you can go into CNC mode and use that to drill your holes for hinge plates and drawer slides when you insert drawers in there. Or you can manually punch holes like I did. You can angle your shelves. You can pull in parts from the warehouse, like closet rods and so on, to put in there. You can copy shelves, whatever you want to do, and just keep manipulating it till you get the look that you want. And if you have trouble creating production documentation, you may have deleted too many parts, and you need to put those back before creating your documentation. So that was a lot of information, and I went through it kind of quickly. You might have to watch it a couple times, but if you have any questions about it, please post on our forum, and we'll try to help you out. You can always send us a model, and we can take a look at it. Good luck.